Friends, the story begins at a family dinner table, where the Deal family is sitting together. There's the mother, Jen, the youngest son, Max, and the older daughter, Emma, who is already upset because the biggest party of the year is happening tonight and she's stuck here. Their brother Taylor is also at the table, even though he almost never joins the family for dinner. Max immediately suspects that something serious is about to happen. And he's right. Eric and Jen tell the kids that they've decided to live separately for a while, calling it a trial separation. The children are crushed. Emma immediately says that this basically means divorce. Max gets so confused by the word trial that he thinks his parents are going to court, and Taylor simply gets up without saying anything and leaves. Then at that exact moment, the entire scene begins rewinding, taking the story back to earlier that same morning. That morning, Eric and Jen decide that they'll tell the kids everything during dinner that night. This is the one particular day that we're going to see again and again as the story continues. Then a huge old broken grandfather clock is delivered to the house, a clock that once belonged to Eric's late father and had been sitting in storage for years. Jen gets annoyed because they're trying to remove things from their lives, not bring in more giant pieces of furniture. Eventually, the clock is taken down to the basement, exactly where Taylor lives. And this is where we learn the most important thing about Taylor. Taylor doesn't speak. He communicates through his computer and a voice app that sounds like Barack Obama. Jen notices a message written on the clock saying that sometimes the clock can help, but only you can change the events. She laughs it off as some meaningless old saying. She has no idea just how real those words actually are. Then something happens that nobody notices. Jen is just about to ask Taylor about coming to dinner when Taylor already tells her that yes, he'll be there tonight. A moment later, he tells her to open the door. And at that exact second, the doorbell rings. On the way, Max complains that Taylor got the best deal because doctors diagnosed his problems, so now he gets to spend all day in the basement playing games. Jen explains that Taylor's life is anything but easy. He doesn't like being touched, and he almost never leaves the house. Then she mentions something that sounds completely ordinary at the time. Taylor had been working on that old clock earlier today. Jen runs a fitness studio. After one of her classes, her new student Richard, a confident lawyer, tries to impress her. Suddenly, there's a loud accident outside. The driver shouts that a boy unexpectedly stepped into the middle of the road and barely avoided getting hit. The color drains from Jen's face because only one name enters her mind: Taylor. She rushes back home. A short while later, Taylor walks through the door, but he refuses to answer her questions. And then Jen notices something that seems impossible. Her father-in-law's broken clock is running again. Taylor has fixed it. After that, Eric and Jen visit their marriage therapist, who spends half the session spraying water on his flowering plants. Eric calmly says that he's exhausted by the distrust, the lack of interest, and the resentment between them. And if they're basically going to live like single people anyway, he thinks they might as well do it sooner rather than later. Jen's next meeting with Richard happens at a restaurant, where she only planned to have him sign a release form. Richard quickly shifts the conversation and tells her that he felt a connection with her from the very first time they met. But suddenly, Jen's expression changes. Richard's face has become swollen and red. He has a severe tree nut allergy, and he's struggling to breathe. Richard manages to tell her that there's an EpiPen in his car. Jen helps him reach the car, finds the EpiPen, and, even though she absolutely hates needles, gives him the injection. Richard begins recovering. At that exact moment, Emma calls, and everything changes again. Taylor is missing from the house. The boy who practically never steps outside is suddenly nowhere to be found. Jen drops everything and races home, only to discover that Taylor has already returned. Relieved, she tries to hug him, but Emma immediately reminds her that Taylor doesn't like being touched. That evening, the mood finally begins to soften. Jen gets emotional and admits that for months she thought they were making the right decision, but today she no longer knows what they're doing. Eric says they don't have to tell the kids tonight. For one brief moment, it feels like their family might still be saved. And then Eric finds the EpiPen in Jen's pocket. The truth slowly comes out. A restaurant, a new man, and the fact that they held hands. Eric's expression turns cold. In a sarcastic tone, he tells her congratulations and walks away. That one small truth has completely thrown the entire day off track, and now we're back at the same dinner table, hearing the same words and watching the same argument unfold. Once again, Taylor gets up in the middle of it and leaves. And then comes the same rewind. By now, we understand only one thing. Someone is making this day happen over and over again. In the new loop, Eric straight up bribes Emma. Just come to dinner tonight, and tomorrow she can stay out as late as she wants. Then he tells her that she's never really given them anything to worry about. Emma's response becomes one of the saddest lines in the scene. Dad has never worried about her, and those are two completely different things. Emma meets her friend Jacob and tells him she can't come to the party. Jacob gets annoyed and makes a sarcastic comment. A little later, Emma sees that same Jacob pulling another girl aside to talk to her privately. During theater rehearsal, her co-star Dylan nervously invites her to a screening of Macbeth. Emma agrees, only to find out that the screening is happening tonight. Just then, a teacher tells her that her mother called and there's a family emergency at home. Emma rushes home in a panic, but the house is empty. The only person there is Taylor, down in the basement. And this is where the movie reveals its biggest twist. This time, Taylor changes the voice on his speech app to sound like a British pop star so Emma will actually pay attention. He tells her the emergency is real. Mom and Dad are going to separate tonight, and he needs Emma's help. Emma asks how he could possibly know any of this. And that's when Taylor drops the bomb. Their grandfather's clock can send time 12 hours backward. He discovered it on the very first day the clock arrived. But the real shock is that, according to him, this is already the 23rd version of the same day. That's why he knows exactly how the day will end, and even knows what Emma is about to say next. Emma calls it ridiculous, and Taylor immediately shows her that he already wrote down those exact words. Then Emma says a completely random phrase just to test him, and Taylor has that written down too. In that moment, everything changes for her. Her brother, who doesn't even speak, has been living through this same day over and over again all by himself, trying to save their parents. Taylor tells her that he can handle Mom, but he needs Emma's help with Dad. Emma refuses at first. As far as she's concerned, love can't be trusted anyway. Taylor's response hits her hard. Jacob may have been a terrible boyfriend, but Mom and Dad are different. Emma finally agrees to join the team. On the way, Emma asks Taylor if he actually can speak, but simply chooses not to. She doesn't get an answer because suddenly Taylor jumps out of the car and runs straight into the middle of the road. One car slams on the brakes, another bumps into it, and Emma completely panics. Taylor stays perfectly calm. He already knew exactly how the whole accident would play out. Now the two of them watch their dad from a distance. Emma bluntly says that Mom is beautiful, while Dad looks completely worn down, like he stopped trying a long time ago. Then she gets an idea, but they're going to need money. Taylor pulls out a thick stack of cash and explains that he made it through the stock market. Because when you already know which stocks are about to rise within the next hour, making money becomes pretty easy. Emma's plan is to trick Dad into getting a makeover by telling him there's a free haircut promotion at his office. The effect is immediate. For the first time that day, Jen notices his haircut. The two of them laugh together and head home side by side. Taylor says he's never managed to get the two of them this far before. In the car, Emma finally opens up about how she really feels. She says that the first time Mom and Dad told them about the separation, she acted like she didn't care. Because when you have no control over something, pretending not to care is easier. Then she finally admits the truth. She can't even imagine Mom and Dad not being together. The two of them reach Richard's car and take the EpiPen from inside. Emma immediately panics, thinking Taylor wants to seriously hurt Richard. Taylor quickly corrects her. Getting rid of Mom's new friend wouldn't solve anything. Mom does need a wake-up call, just not that kind. What she really needs is a vision. And that vision comes through Dylan. In a public place, he performs Macbeth's famous Tomorrow passage right in front of Jen. But at the end, he adds several lines that aren't actually part of the play, saying that his own partner is already gone, but hers is still here, and she still has a chance to change what happens. So she needs to change today, while she still can. Jen is left completely stunned. That night, for the first time, something actually changes. Eric tells the kids that there won't be any big announcement tonight, just a nice family dinner. But then Eric recognizes Dylan. Jen, confused, asks why that boy had been following her around quoting Shakespeare. Emma panics and admits that it was her idea because she wanted to change their plans. And when Jen pretends not to understand, Emma blurts out that she already knows about the divorce. In anger, she also brings up Richard, and the entire dinner explodes into an argument. Right there at the table, Eric announces that the two of them are separating. The day is ruined once again, and everything rewinds. In the next loop, we see the same day from Dad's point of view. Down in the basement, Eric notices that the clock is already running. Then Taylor asks him something that hits him hard. Why is Dad planning to leave the house tonight? Eric has no answer. Taylor asks him to promise that he'll never leave them. Eric breaks down crying and says that he loves all three of his children more than anything, and that he never wanted things to end up this way. Throughout the moment, Taylor keeps replaying one of Eric's own recorded lines through his device, almost like he's responding in the only way he knows how. Later that day, Emma shows up at her dad's workplace and catches him smoking. She offers him a deal. She'll keep it a secret if he lets her give him a makeover. Later, Jen is impressed when she sees his new look. In this loop, something completely different happens during therapy. Now the same therapist is telling them that they shouldn't separate. And then comes a surprisingly sweet moment. Jen and Eric walk outside, make fun of the therapist together, laugh, and for the first time in a long while, they actually feel like a team. They head home together and grow closer again. Later, they ask the question almost every struggling couple eventually asks: when did we stop trying? Eric says giving up is always easier, and that's basically what entropy is. Jen quietly asks whether there's any way to find their way back. Meanwhile, Eric goes to check out his new bachelor apartment. His realtor, Devin, opens the door, and the entire place is completely trashed inside. This is the kids' work too. Eric just stands there asking himself what he's even doing. Back home, Eric finally says what lies at the heart of the entire story. He says that ever since Taylor was born, he has felt like a ghost inside his own home. He was never able to truly connect with Taylor, and little by little, he stopped connecting with Jen too. For months, he had already kept one foot out the door, but something changed today, and now he realizes he doesn't want a life without his family. Then Emma gets permission to go to the party, and she looks incredibly happy. But the truth is, she isn't even planning to go. She's happy because mom and dad finally seem different, and then one phone screen destroys everything. A message from the realtor says that Eric's new bachelor apartment is ready. Jen's trust collapses in a second, and the day resets again. In the next loop, the secret finally reaches the third sibling. Max catches them planning everything, and Emma immediately turns the clock backward. Now he's part of the loop too. Then Taylor adds something frightening. The clock is getting old and can't handle much more. This might be their final chance. Now all three kids become a team. Max goes to mom and pretends he needs information for a school report, asking what her first date with dad was like. Jen's eyes fill with emotion. Eric had tickets to the symphony. She didn't even like classical music, but she liked the guy. Outside the concert hall, there was a truck selling beignets, and she still remembers that very first bite. And at that exact moment, snow started falling, even though it almost never snowed in their city. She says it was a magical moment when the city, the man who would become her husband, and her entire future seemed to come together at once. Max immediately runs back to his siblings with 3 words: symphony, snow, and beignet truck. Then a fast-paced montage begins. They trash Eric's bachelor apartment. Max takes Richard's phone so he can't interrupt their plan. And Taylor uses his voice app to call Devin and convince him that he's actually Barack Obama, just to keep him distracted. And then comes the moment all of this was leading to. Jen and Eric arrive at the same place where an orchestra is playing classical music, with a beignet stand nearby. They both look at each other suspiciously, wondering who arranged all of this. They eat the beignets, laugh about old memories, and Eric admits that on their first date, he was so nervous he couldn't even eat. And then the snow begins to fall. Fake snow, but the feeling it creates is completely real. Standing there in the snow, Eric finally says exactly what the kids have been desperate to hear. He wants to stay with his family, and as far as he's concerned, there is no other home for him. Jen says she wants the same thing. For one moment, it feels like all their hard work has finally paid off. But this story isn't going to let them win that easily. Outside the house, Richard shows up with Max because Max forgot to turn off the phone's location tracking. Right behind him comes Devin, happily announcing that the bachelor apartment is ready. Suddenly, Jen's new student, Eric's realtor, the missing phone, and the bachelor pad are all exposed in the exact same place. Max finally loses his patience and tells everyone the truth. The 3 kids have spent the entire day doing everything they can to keep their parents together, and every single time, mom and dad somehow ruin it themselves. Then he reveals the biggest secret. Taylor has already lived through this exact same day 38 times. Their parents are left speechless, and before anyone can fully process what he just said, the day resets again. Eventually, Emma notices that the clock is starting to fail. Max still wants to turn it backward again, but Emma tries to stop him. The two struggle over the clock until it falls to the floor and shatters into pieces. There are no more rewinds. Furious, Emma lashes out at Max and tells him this is exactly why she always keeps her distance from him. A little later, Emma comes downstairs where Max is blasting his music, but she isn't there to argue. She apologizes and tells him she wants them to create something together. The two begin writing a song, with Emma handling the lyrics and Max creating the music. For the first time, these siblings are doing something together without using a trick or trying to manipulate the day. And then comes the most beautiful scene in the entire movie. Jen and Eric are called in and asked to sit down. Emma begins telling them a story, the story of a couple who have everything except each other. And by the end of today, they won't even be a couple anymore because they simply can't figure out how to stay together. Then Max starts playing guitar and singing about how mom and dad can't stay together, while everyone keeps saying that today can't be changed. At the end of the song, Emma says the line that hits both parents the hardest. She wishes there were one moment that could change everything. One moment that could make their wedding rings mean something again. Eric has no words left. Then Taylor walks over, brings everyone together, and hugs them all. The entire room falls into a long silence. The next morning, the alarm goes off. All three siblings spent the night camping out together in the same room, and they laugh about how they should do this more often. Just not so often that it stops feeling special. And most importantly, this morning is finally real, because there is no longer any way to go back. And that's where the deepest message of the story becomes clear. Taylor had the power to turn time backward 86 times, and even that wasn't enough to fix his parents' relationship, because no machine can change someone's heart. What finally made a difference wasn't another trick. It was three children showing their parents exactly how many lives were being affected by their separation. Relationships don't fall apart because there isn't enough time. They fall apart when people stop trying. So now you tell me, if you had the chance to live one day again, what is the one moment you would choose to change?